Part 1. The Gate Guard. Nobody respected Maria Santos stood at the entrance gate of Naval Base San Diego with her shoulders straight and her chin up. The morning sun was just beginning to rise over the Pacific Ocean. She had been awake since 4:30 in the morning to prepare for her shift. Her uniform was perfectly clean and pressed. Every button shined like a small mirror. Her boots were polished until they reflected the sunlight. But none of this mattered to the people who walked past her every day. Maria had been working gate duty for 3 months now. 3 long months of checking identification cards and visitor passes. 3 months of watching other sailors walk by with smirks on their faces. 3 months of hearing whispered comments about how gate duty was punishment for soldiers who could not handle real work. The other guards who worked the gates treated their jobs like a joke. They would arrive late for their shifts with wrinkled uniforms and messy hair. They would sit in their chairs and talk to their friends instead of watching for problems. When visitors came to the gate, they would barely look at identification cards before waving people through. But Maria was different. She treated every person who came to her gate like they might be a threat to national security. She studied every face carefully. She examined every identification card like her life depended on it. She memorized the names and faces of regular visitors so she could spot anyone who did not belong. Her fellow soldiers did not understand why she worked so hard. They called her names behind her back. They said she was trying too hard to impress the officers. They said gate duty was baby work that any fool could do. They said she should just relax and stop making everyone else look bad. Maria tried not to let their words hurt her feelings. But sometimes when she was alone in her room at night, she would wonder if they were right. Maybe she was not cut out for military life. Maybe she should have stayed home in Texas and found a normal job like her friends from high school. The worst part was her supervisor, Sergeant Thompson. He was a big man with gray hair and cold eyes who had been in the military for 20 years. He treated Maria like she was invisible most of the time. When he did talk to her, it was only to give her the worst assignments. He would make her work the longest shifts in the hottest weather. He would assign her to check the trucks that came early in the morning when it was still dark outside. Sergeant Thompson never said anything good about Maria's work. Even when she found problems that other guards missed, he would just grunt and walk away. Maria had caught 2 people with fake identification cards in her first month. She had also found someone trying to bring weapons onto the base hidden in their car. But Sergeant Thompson acted like these discoveries were just lucky accidents. What Sergeant Thompson and the other soldiers did not know was that Maria had not ended up at gate duty by accident. She had not been assigned there as punishment for making mistakes. The truth was much more complicated than that. Maria had grown up in a small town in Texas where her father worked as a police officer and her mother was a teacher. She had always dreamed of serving her country like her older brother Carlos, who had joined the Marines when she was still in high school. When Carlos came home in his dress blue uniform, Maria knew that she wanted to wear a military uniform too. She had studied hard in school and earned good grades. She learned to speak Spanish from her grandmother and French from her high school teacher. She even taught herself some basic Arabic by watching videos on the internet because she thought it might be useful in the military. She exercised every day and could run 5 miles without stopping. When Maria joined the Navy, she scored higher on her tests than most of the other new recruits. She finished at the top of her class in military police training. Her instructors said she had natural instincts for security work and could spot trouble before it started. They recommended her for advanced training and special assignments, but when Maria arrived at Naval Base San Diego, something went wrong with her paperwork. The officer who was supposed to assign her to detective work was transferred to another base. The replacement officer looked at her file for about 30 seconds before assigning her to gate duty. When Maria tried to explain about her training and qualifications, the officer told her that all new arrivals started with basic security work. Maria had been trying for 3 months to get a meeting with someone who could fix the mistake. She had written reports about her qualifications and submitted requests for different assignments, but every report disappeared into a pile of papers on Sergeant Thompson's desk. Every request was denied without explanation. So Maria decided to make the best of her situation. She would show everyone that she could excel at any job the military gave her. She would prove that gate duty was important work that deserved respect and attention. She would demonstrate that a good soldier could find ways to serve their country no matter what their assignment might be. Every morning, Maria arrived at her post 15 minutes early. She would check all the equipment to make sure everything was working properly. She would review the list of people who were expected to visit the base that day. She would study photographs of individuals who were not allowed on the base for security reasons. During her shifts, Maria paid attention to details that other guards ignored. She noticed when someone seemed nervous or uncomfortable. She watched for vehicles that did not match their paperwork. She listened for foreign languages or unusual conversations. She remembered faces and could spot the same person trying to enter the base multiple times with different identification. At the end of each shift, Maria wrote detailed reports about everything she had observed. She described every person who had seemed suspicious. She noted every vehicle that had unusual modifications. She recorded every conversation she had overheard that might be important for security, but nobody ever read her reports. Nobody ever asked her opinion about security improvements. Nobody ever acknowledged that she was doing excellent work in a job that everyone else considered beneath their attention. Maria knew that someday her dedication and hard work would be noticed. She believed that good soldiers eventually got the recognition they deserved. She had faith that the military would reward people who served with honor and distinction regardless of their current assignment. She just had to keep doing her best and wait for the right opportunity to prove herself. The harassment started getting worse after Maria had been at gate duty for 2 months. It began small with whispered comments and rolled eyes when she walked past groups of sailors. But soon the comments became louder, and the treatment became more direct and cruel. Maria made the mistake of volunteering for extra training during her free time. While other soldiers went into town to drink beer and have fun, Maria signed up for advanced security classes. She studied new languages at night when everyone else was watching television or playing video games. She practiced combat techniques in the empty gymnasium after dinner. The other soldiers thought this was stupid and weird. They could not understand why anyone would choose to do more military work when they did not have to. They started calling her names like teacher's pet and try hard. They said she was showing off and trying to make everyone else look bad. Sergeant Thompson made things worse by the way he reacted to Maria's extra training. Every time she brought him a certificate from a class she had completed, he would look at it like it was garbage. He would toss the papers into a drawer without reading them. Sometimes he would make comments about how some people had too much time on their hands. Maria's roommate Jessica tried to be supportive, but even she did not really understand. Jessica was a nice person who worked in the base kitchen preparing food for the mess hall. She liked Maria but thought her friend was pushing herself too hard for no good reason. "Why do you care so much about gate duty?" Jessica would ask. "It is just a temporary assignment until they find you something better. You should relax and enjoy the easy work while you can." But Maria could not explain to Jessica that gate duty was not supposed to be her permanent job. She could not tell her roommate about her real qualifications or her dreams of doing important security work. Jessica might not believe her, or worse, she might tell other people who would just make fun of Maria even more. The situation reached a breaking point on a Friday morning in October. Maria was working the main gate when a group of young sailors approached her checkpoint. They had obviously been drinking the night before and were feeling sick and angry. Their uniforms were wrinkled and dirty. Their hair was messy and their eyes were red. The leader of the group was Petty Officer Marcus Webb. Webb was 26 years old and had been in the Navy for 4 years. He was known throughout the base for his mean sense of humor and his belief that women should not be allowed in the military at all. He especially hated the idea of women being given any kind of responsibility or authority. Webb had heard about Maria's extra training and her serious attitude toward gate duty. He thought it was ridiculous that a woman would try so hard at such an easy job. He had been planning to teach her a lesson about not taking herself so seriously. When Webb reached Maria's gate, he pretended to be confused about the basic entry procedures. He fumbled around in his pockets like he could not find his identification card. He acted like he did not understand simple questions about his destination on the base. Webb's friends thought this was hilarious. They started laughing and making jokes about how the gate guard was too stupid to help them figure out how to enter their own base. They said maybe Maria needed to go back to school before she could be trusted with such complicated work as checking identification cards. Maria knew exactly what Webb was doing, but she remained calm and professional. She had dealt with difficult people before and knew that losing her temper would only make things worse. She followed all the proper procedures exactly as she had been trained to do, but Webb was not finished with his game. He deliberately damaged his identification card by bending it and scratching the surface. Then he handed it to Maria and complained that she was taking too long to process it. He said maybe she was not smart enough to read a simple identification card. More sailors started gathering behind Webb's group, waiting to get through the gate. Instead of telling Webb to stop wasting everyone's time, they joined in with the laughter and comments. They started making jokes about how Maria was probably too slow and confused to handle her job properly. Some of the comments were about Maria being a woman. They said women were naturally worse at security work because they were not tough enough. They said gate duty was probably too difficult for someone like Maria, and maybe she should be transferred to cooking or cleaning jobs instead. Other comments were about Maria's serious attitude toward her work. They said she acted like gate duty was the most important job in the military, when everyone knew it was just busy work for people who could not handle real responsibility. They said she was trying to impress the officers, but it was not working, because everyone could see she was not qualified for anything better. Maria felt her face, getting hot with embarrassment and anger, but she continued to do her job properly. She carefully examined Webb's damaged identification card and checked it against the computer system. She noticed that there had been several security alerts recently about people trying to get unauthorized access to classified areas of the base. The description of one suspect matched someone Maria had seen hanging around the gates during the past week. This person had not tried to enter the base but had been watching the security procedures and asking questions about shift changes and guard rotations. Maria made a mental note to include this observation in her daily report, even though she knew Sergeant Thompson probably would not read it. While Maria was working, Webb continued his performance for the crowd. He complained loudly about having to wait for someone who was obviously not qualified for her job. He suggested that the military was becoming too soft by allowing people like Maria to serve in any capacity. He said taxpayers deserved better security than what they were getting from incompetent guards. The crowd of soldiers grew larger and louder. Some of them started chanting for Maria to hurry up and stop wasting their time. Others made suggestions about what jobs Maria should be doing instead of security work. A few made comments about her appearance and whether she was tough enough to be a real soldier. Maria completed her security check and determined that Webb's identification was legitimate despite the damage. She returned his card and allowed him to enter the base. But the damage to her reputation and self-confidence was already done. Word about the incident spread quickly throughout the base, and Maria found herself facing even more ridicule and disrespect. During her lunch break, Maria sat alone in the cafeteria, while other soldiers talked and laughed at nearby tables. She could hear fragments of conversations about the morning's incident. People were discussing how gate duty was perfect for people who could not handle real military work. They were speculating about whether Maria would ever be promoted or given more important assignments. That evening, Maria sat in her small room and wrote a letter to her brother Carlos, who was deployed overseas with the Marines. She told him about her frustration with her assignment and the constant disrespect from her fellow soldiers. She described how hard she was working to prove herself worthy of better opportunities. Carlos had always been Maria's biggest supporter and had encouraged her to join the military, even when their parents worried it was too dangerous. In her letter, Maria wondered if she had made a mistake by enlisting. She asked if maybe she was not cut out for military life after all. Maria sealed the letter, but she could not bring herself to send it. Instead, she put it in a drawer with several other letters she had written during her lowest moments. She was not ready to admit defeat to her brother or to herself. She still believed that hard work and dedication would eventually be rewarded, but as she lay in her narrow bed that night listening to the sounds of the base around her, Maria wondered how much longer she could endure the mockery and disrespect. She wondered if anyone would ever see past the gate duty assignment to recognize her true potential and qualifications. After the humiliating incident with Petty Officer Webb and his friends, Maria knew that her life on the base would become even more difficult. She was right. Word about what happened at the gate spread through the naval base like wildfire. By the end of the day, almost everyone had heard some version of the story. Most people who heard the story thought it was funny. They laughed about how Webb had made the gate guard look foolish and slow. They enjoyed hearing about how Maria had been embarrassed in front of so many people. Some sailors even started planning their own ways to mess with Maria when they passed through her checkpoint. But Maria refused to let the harassment change how she did her job. The next morning she arrived at her post 15 minutes early, just like always. Her uniform was perfectly clean and pressed. Her equipment was checked and ready. Her attitude was professional and focused. The first few people who came through Maria's gate that morning were expecting to see someone who was broken and defeated. Instead, they found the same serious and thorough guard who had been there for months. Maria checked their identification cards carefully. She asked the proper questions about their business on the base. She maintained eye contact and spoke clearly and confidently. Some of the sailors were disappointed that their harassment had not worked. They had expected Maria to become sloppy and careless after being humiliated. They thought she might even request a transfer to a different assignment. Instead, she seemed more determined than ever to do excellent work. During her morning shift, Maria noticed something that made her feel concerned about base security. There was a man in civilian clothes who kept walking past the gate area. He would approach like he wanted to enter the base, but then turn around and walk away. He did this 3 times in 2 hours. Maria watched the man carefully without being obvious about it. He appeared to be in his 30s with dark hair and a thin build. He wore jeans and a plain white shirt that looked new and expensive. He carried a briefcase that seemed too heavy for papers or a laptop computer. The man seemed to be studying the security procedures at the gate. He watched how the guards checked identification cards and vehicles. He paid attention to shift changes and break times. He took notes on a small pad of paper that he tried to hide from view. Maria remembered the security alerts about people trying to gain unauthorized access to classified areas. The description of one suspect was similar to this man. She decided to include detailed observations about him in her daily report to Sergeant Thompson. But Maria knew from experience that Sergeant Thompson rarely read her reports completely. He usually just glanced at them and filed them away without taking any action. She wondered if she should try to get someone else's attention about the suspicious man. Before Maria could decide what to do, the man disappeared around the corner of a building. She made notes about the time and his appearance, so she could remember everything clearly when she wrote her report. She also decided to watch for him during future shifts. The harassment continued throughout the week. Some sailors would deliberately walk slowly when approaching Maria's gate to waste her time. Others would ask stupid questions or pretend not to understand basic instructions. A few would make loud comments about gate duty being perfect work for people who were not smart enough for real military jobs. Maria tried to stay focused on her work, but the constant mockery was wearing her down. She started having trouble sleeping at night because she kept thinking about all the mean comments and laughter. She lost her appetite and began skipping meals because she did not want to face the other soldiers in the cafeteria. Her roommate Jessica noticed that Maria was becoming more quiet and withdrawn. She tried to cheer Maria up by suggesting they go into town together on the weekend or watch movies in the recreation room. But Maria always had excuses about needing to study or prepare for her next shift. Jessica was worried about her friend, but did not know how to help. She could see that the other soldiers were treating Maria badly, but she did not understand why Maria did not just ask for a different assignment. Jessica worked in the kitchen and never had to deal with the kind of harassment that Maria faced every day. One evening, Jessica tried to have a serious conversation with Maria about what was happening. She suggested that maybe Maria should talk to someone in authority about the way she was being treated. She said the harassment was unfair and probably against military regulations, but Maria knew that complaining would only make things worse. Sergeant Thompson already thought she was a troublemaker who took her job too seriously. If she started reporting harassment, he would probably find ways to make her life even more miserable. The other soldiers would see her as a snitch who could not handle military life. Instead, Maria decided to focus even more energy on doing excellent work. She signed up for additional training courses during her free time. She studied advanced security procedures and emergency response protocols. She practiced foreign languages and physical fitness exercises. The extra training helped Maria feel more confident about her abilities, even though it made the other soldiers mock her even more. They could not understand why anyone would choose to do more work than required. They thought Maria was either showing off or desperately trying to impress the officers. What they did not know was that Maria's extra training was already paying off in ways they could not see. Her language skills helped her understand conversations between foreign visitors to the base. Her knowledge of security procedures helped her spot problems that other guards missed. Her physical fitness training kept her alert and focused during long shifts. Maria also started keeping a personal journal about everything she observed during her shifts. She wrote down descriptions of suspicious people and vehicles. She noted patterns in visitor schedules and security procedures. She recorded conversations that seemed unusual or important. Maria's journal became a detailed record of everything that happened at the base gates. She hoped that someday this information might be useful for improving security or solving problems. She also hoped that someone in authority would eventually recognize the value of her careful observations and attention to detail. Meanwhile, the suspicious man with the briefcase continued to appear near the gate area. Maria saw him several more times over the next 2 weeks. He never tried to enter the base, but he kept watching and taking notes. Maria included information about him in every daily report, but Sergeant Thompson never asked her any questions about it. Maria began to feel frustrated that important security information was being ignored. She wondered if she should try to contact someone higher in the chain of command, but she knew that going over Sergeant Thompson's head could get her in serious trouble. Instead, Maria decided to be extra vigilant and ready for anything. She had a feeling that something important was going to happen soon. She did not know what it would be, but she was determined to be prepared when the time came. Maria continued to endure the mockery and harassment from her fellow soldiers. She maintained her professional standards and positive attitude, despite the constant pressure. She kept studying and training and improving her skills. Deep down, Maria still believed that hard work and dedication would eventually be rewarded. She had faith that the military valued good soldiers regardless of their current assignment. She just had to keep doing her best and wait for the right opportunity to prove herself. That opportunity was coming sooner than anyone expected. Tuesday morning started like any other day for Maria Santos. She woke up at 4:30 in the morning and prepared for her shift at the gate. The sun was just beginning to rise over the ocean and the air was cool and fresh. Maria put on her perfectly pressed uniform and polished her boots until they shined like mirrors. She arrived at her post 15 minutes early as always. She checked all her equipment and reviewed the list of expected visitors for the day. She studied the photographs of people who were banned from entering the base. She prepared herself mentally for another day of harassment and mockery from the people she was trying to protect. The morning started quietly with only a few regular visitors in base, personnel passing through the checkpoint. Maria processed each person with her usual care and attention to detail. She examined identification cards thoroughly and asked appropriate questions about destinations and business on the base. Around 9:30 in the morning, Maria saw a delivery truck approaching her gate. Delivery trucks came to the base every day bringing supplies and equipment. Most guards barely looked at these vehicles because they were considered routine and harmless. The drivers usually had proper paperwork and rarely caused any problems. But something about this particular truck made Maria feel uneasy. She could not explain exactly what was wrong, but her instincts told her to pay extra attention. The truck looked normal from the outside, but the driver seemed nervous and uncomfortable. The driver was a man in his 40s with graying hair and a thin mustache. He wore the standard uniform of the delivery company and had identification that looked legitimate. But he was sweating even though the morning air was cool. He kept checking his mirrors like he was worried about being followed. When the driver handed Maria his paperwork, she noticed that his hands were shaking slightly. His eyes darted around nervously and he seemed eager to get through the gate as quickly as possible. He kept mentioning that he was running late and could not afford any delays. Maria began her standard inspection of the delivery truck. She checked the paperwork against the manifest and verified the driver's identification. Everything appeared to be in order, but she still felt that something was not right. The truck seemed heavier than it should be based on what was listed in the manifest. As Maria walked around the vehicle, she noticed fresh scratches around the lock mechanisms on the back doors. The scratches looked recent and suggested that someone had been tampering with the locks. She also saw that the truck sat lower on its springs than other delivery vehicles of the same size. The driver became increasingly agitated as Maria continued her inspection. He started complaining loudly about being delayed and threatened to report her to base command for harassment. He mentioned having connections with important officers and suggested that Maria would face serious consequences if she made him any later. These threats only made Maria more suspicious. In her experience, people who had nothing to hide did not get angry about routine security checks. Legitimate delivery drivers understood that inspections were necessary for base security and usually cooperated cheerfully. Maria decided to conduct a more thorough inspection of the truck. She asked the driver to open the back door so she could examine the cargo. The driver refused and claimed that the cargo was sealed and could not be opened without damaging the packages. This refusal was a major red flag for Maria. Standard base procedures required that all cargo be available for inspection upon request. No legitimate delivery company would refuse to open their trucks for security personnel. Maria knew she had the authority to detain the vehicle until a proper inspection could be completed. Maria contacted her supervisor to report the situation, but Sergeant Thompson was in a meeting and could not be reached. The backup supervisor, Corporal Rodriguez, arrived at the gate 15 minutes later. He seemed annoyed about being called away from his other duties. Corporal Rodriguez was a lazy man who preferred to avoid paperwork and complicated situations. He looked at the delivery truck and the increasingly angry driver and decided that Maria was being overly cautious. He suggested that she should just process the truck through the gate and stop wasting everyone's time. The driver smiled when he heard this. He clearly expected that military bureaucracy would work in his favor. He probably thought that a junior guard like Maria would not have the authority or courage to stand up to a supervisor. But Maria had been studying base security regulations during her extra training sessions. She knew that any service member had the authority to detain suspicious persons or vehicles when base security might be at risk. This authority existed regardless of rank and could not be overruled by convenience or pressure from supervisors. Maria politely but firmly informed Corporal Rodriguez and the driver that she was exercising her authority to hold the vehicle for a complete inspection. She explained that the driver's behavior and the condition of the truck gave her reasonable suspicion that something was wrong. Corporal Rodriguez was furious. He threatened to write Maria up for insubordination and exceeding her authority. He said she was causing unnecessary problems and embarrassing the base with her paranoid behavior. He ordered her to release the truck immediately. The driver joined in with complaints about harassment and discrimination. He demanded to speak with higher-ranking officers who would put an end to Maria's unreasonable delays. He claimed that his company would file complaints about the poor treatment they were receiving, but Maria stood her ground. She had been mocked and harassed for months, but she had never compromised her commitment to doing her job properly. She was not going to start. Now, just because a supervisor wanted to avoid paperwork. Maria calmly explained that she would need written orders from the base commander before she would release a vehicle that she considered suspicious. She said that base security was more important than avoiding inconvenience or complaints from delivery companies. Corporal Rodriguez realized that Maria was serious and that she knew the regulations better than he did. He could not force her to release the truck without proper authority. He stormed off to find someone who could resolve the situation. While they waited for higher-ranking officers to arrive, Maria continued to observe the driver carefully. His nervousness was increasing and he kept looking around like he was planning to run away. He made several phone calls on his cell phone speaking in a language that Maria recognized as Arabic. Maria's language training allowed her to understand parts of the conversation. The driver was reporting that the operation had been discovered and asking for instructions. He mentioned something about abort procedures and emergency protocols. This confirmed Maria's suspicions that something serious was happening. She positioned herself between the driver and the truck to prevent him from accessing whatever was hidden in the cargo area. She also prepared to call for backup if the situation escalated. The driver finished his phone calls and seemed to make a decision. He started walking quickly toward the truck like he was planning to drive away. Maria stepped in front of him and ordered him to stop. She told him that the vehicle was being detained for security reasons and that he was not allowed to leave. The driver pushed past Maria and tried to get into the truck. Maria grabbed his arm and used her combat training to restrain him. The driver struggled and tried to break free, but Maria was stronger and better trained than he expected. Other base personnel who were nearby saw the struggle and came running to help. They surrounded the truck and prevented the driver from escaping. Someone called base security and requested immediate assistance. Within minutes, the area was swarming with security personnel and military police. The driver was handcuffed and placed under arrest. The truck was secured and prepared for a detailed search by experts. Maria stood back and watched as her careful observations and stubborn insistence on proper procedures led to what was obviously a major security incident. She did not know exactly what they would find in the truck, but she was certain it was something that could have caused serious harm to the base. For the first time in months, Maria felt proud of her work. She had trusted her instincts and followed proper procedures despite pressure from supervisors and threats from the suspect. She had proven that gate duty was important work that required skill and dedication. The investigation was just beginning, but Maria already knew that everything was about to change. The same people who had mocked her dedication to security would soon learn just how important her job really was. Within 1 hour of the driver's arrest, the entire atmosphere at Naval Base San Diego had changed completely. What started as a routine Tuesday morning had turned into the biggest security crisis the base had seen in years. Military police vehicles surrounded the delivery truck while experts prepared to examine its contents. Maria stood at a safe distance watching teams of specialists arrive to handle the investigation. She had never seen so many important-looking people respond to a single incident. Officers with gold braids on their uniforms hurried back and forth, carrying clipboards and radios. Men in civilian suits who looked like federal agents took photographs and made phone calls. The base commander, Rear Admiral Patricia Hayes, arrived in her official car with lights flashing. Admiral Hayes was a stern woman in her 50s, who had earned respect throughout the Navy for her no-nonsense approach to military discipline and security. She rarely left her office except for the most serious emergencies. Admiral Hayes spoke briefly with the head of base security, and then walked over to where Maria was standing. Maria snapped to attention and saluted crisply. She had never been this close to such a high-ranking officer before and felt nervous about making a good impression. Admiral Hayes returned the salute and looked Maria directly in the eyes. She asked Maria to explain exactly what had made her suspicious about the delivery truck. Maria described the driver's nervous behavior, the fresh scratches on the locks, and the way the truck seemed heavier than it should be based on the manifest. The Admiral listened carefully to every detail of Maria's report. She asked specific questions about the timeline of events and the driver's attempts to avoid inspection. Maria answered each question clearly and completely, using the precise language she had learned in her military police training. Admiral Hayes seemed impressed by Maria's thorough observations and professional manner. She told Maria that her actions had potentially prevented a serious security breach. The Admiral said that Maria should remain available to assist with the investigation and that her detailed reports would be very important for understanding what had happened. Meanwhile, the bomb disposal team had arrived and was preparing to examine the truck's cargo. These specialists wore heavy protective suits and used robots to safely investigate suspicious packages. The entire area was cleared of unnecessary personnel in case the cargo contained explosives or other dangerous materials. Maria watched from the command post as the specialists carefully opened the back doors of the delivery truck. Even from a distance, she could see that the cargo area did not contain the office supplies and cleaning products listed on the manifest. Instead, there were large metal boxes and electronic equipment that looked much more sophisticated and expensive. The bomb disposal team quickly determined that the cargo did not contain explosives, but they found something that was potentially even more dangerous to national security. The metal boxes contained advanced surveillance equipment, including cameras, microphones, and radio transmitters. There were also detailed maps and photographs of classified areas within the naval base. The surveillance equipment was far more sophisticated than anything a normal criminal could afford. The cameras were designed to be completely invisible when installed and could transmit high-quality video signals over long distances. The microphones could pick up conversations from hundreds of feet away even, through walls and windows. The maps and photographs showed submarine piers, weapons, storage areas, and command centers that were supposed to be secret. Someone had spent months or possibly years gathering intelligence about the most sensitive parts of the naval base. The level of detail suggested that foreign agents had been planning a major espionage operation. Federal agents from the FBI and Naval Criminal Investigative Service arrived within 2 hours of the discovery. These investigators specialized in cases involving national security and foreign intelligence operations. They immediately took control of the scene and began interviewing everyone who had been involved. Maria found herself sitting in a small office answering detailed questions about everything she had observed over the past several months. The investigators were particularly interested in her reports about the suspicious man who had been watching the gate procedures. They showed her photographs of known foreign agents and asked if any of them looked familiar. One of the photographs matched the man Maria had seen taking notes near the gate area. The investigators told her that this person was a suspected intelligence officer from a hostile foreign country. Her careful observations had helped identify someone who was probably coordinating the espionage operation. The investigators also wanted to review all of Maria's daily reports from the past 6 months. When they asked Sergeant Thompson to provide these reports, he had to admit that he had never read most of them carefully. The reports were buried in filing cabinets and had never been analyzed for patterns or security threats. Maria's reports contained a wealth of information that investigators found extremely valuable. She had documented multiple visits by suspicious individuals who were now believed to be part of the foreign intelligence network. She had noted unusual patterns in delivery schedules and visitor requests that suggested careful planning and coordination. The investigators were amazed by the quality and detail of Maria's observations. They said that most security guards would have missed the subtle signs that Maria had carefully recorded. Her background in criminal justice and her extra training in languages and security procedures had given her skills that were rare even among experienced investigators as word spread throughout the base about what had been discovered in the delivery truck. People began to look at Maria very differently. The same sailors who had mocked her dedication to gate duty now realized that her careful attention to security procedures had prevented a major intelligence disaster. Petty Officer Webb, who had humiliated Maria just weeks earlier, was among the first to learn about her role in stopping the espionage operation. Webb suddenly understood that while he had been making jokes about gate security, Maria had been protecting vital national security information. His cruel harassment now seemed not just mean but dangerously stupid. Sergeant Thompson faced the most serious consequences for his failure to take Maria's reports seriously. His supervisors wanted to know why he had ignored detailed security observations from one of his most diligent guards. Thompson realized that his lazy attitude and dismissive treatment of Maria had nearly allowed foreign agents to succeed in their mission. The investigation revealed that the espionage operation had been planned for over a year. Foreign agents had been carefully studying the base's security procedures, looking for weaknesses they could exploit. They had identified gate duty as the most likely point of entry because most guards treated it as routine work that did not require much attention, but the foreign agents had not counted on encountering someone like Maria Santos. Her combination of training instincts and dedication had disrupted their carefully planned operation. Her refusal to compromise her standards despite months of harassment had saved classified information that could have compromised national security. The delivery truck driver was identified as a naturalized American citizen who had been recruited by foreign intelligence services several years earlier. He had been using his legitimate delivery business as cover for espionage activities. Under questioning, he revealed details about the broader network of agents operating in the area. Federal investigators began rounding up other members of the spy ring based on information from Maria's reports and evidence found in the truck. The operation expanded to include multiple law enforcement agencies and resulted in the largest counterintelligence success in the region for many years. Admiral Hayes called Maria to her office that evening to personally thank her for her exceptional service. The Admiral said that Maria's actions had demonstrated the highest ideals of military service and had protected vital national security interests. She promised that Maria's contributions would be formally recognized and that her career prospects would reflect her outstanding performance. As Maria walked back to her quarters that night, she felt a sense of vindication that she had never experienced before. Months of mockery and harassment had been replaced by respect and admiration from the most important people on the base. Her faith in the military's ability to recognize good soldiers had finally been justified, but Maria knew that the most important recognition was still to come. The investigation was expanding, and more high-ranking officials would be learning about her role in stopping the espionage operation. Soon everyone would understand that gate duty was not punishment work, but one of the most important jobs on any military base. The investigation into the foreign espionage operation expanded rapidly over the next 2 weeks. Maria found herself working closely with federal agents and senior military investigators almost every day. Her role had completely changed from gate guard to key witness and intelligence analyst. The transformation was so dramatic that she sometimes felt like she was living in a different world. FBI Special Agent Jennifer Morrison became Maria's primary contact during the investigation. Agent Morrison was an experienced counterintelligence specialist who had worked on similar cases throughout her 20-year career. She was impressed by the quality of information that Maria had gathered through her careful observations at the gate. Agent Morrison explained to Maria that most security breaches happened because guards became careless and stopped paying attention to details. Foreign intelligence services counted on this human tendency to become bored and lazy with routine work. They specifically targeted entry points, where guards were likely to wave people through without proper inspections. But Maria's dedication to thorough security procedures had disrupted the entire espionage operation. Her detailed reports provided investigators with a complete timeline of the foreign agent's activities. Her language skills helped translate intercepted communications. Her knowledge of base procedures helped identify other potential security vulnerabilities. Maria spent hours each day in secure briefing rooms, helping investigators understand what she had observed. She reviewed photographs of suspected agents and identified several people she had seen near the gate over the past months. She explained the normal patterns of visitors and deliveries so investigators could spot unusual activities. The investigators were particularly interested in Maria's training and background. They wanted to understand how someone assigned to gate duty had developed such advanced security awareness. When they learned about her criminal justice education and extra-military training, they realized that her assignment had been a serious mistake. Agent Morrison recommended that Maria be considered for specialized counterintelligence work. She said that Maria's combination of education instincts and dedication made her ideal for detecting and preventing espionage activities. The agent suggested that Maria's talents were being wasted on routine security duties. Meanwhile, the atmosphere on the naval base was changing dramatically. News of the espionage operation had spread throughout the military community and beyond. Reporters from major newspapers and television networks arrived to cover the story. The base became the center of attention for national security officials from Washington. The sailors who had previously mocked Maria now found themselves in an embarrassing position. They had spent months making fun of someone who was actually protecting them from serious threats. Their jokes about gate duty being unimportant work now seemed foolish and dangerous. Petty Officer Webb, who had led the harassment campaign against Maria, was facing disciplinary action for his behavior. His supervisors wanted to know why he had attempted to undermine legitimate security procedures. Webb realized that his cruel treatment of Maria could have damaged national security if it had caused her to become less vigilant. Webb tried to apologize to Maria, but she remained professional and distant. She did not accept his apology, but she also did not seek revenge or additional punishment for him. Maria understood that the best response to past mistreatment was to continue doing excellent work and proving her worth through actions rather than words. Sergeant Thompson faced much more serious consequences for his failure as a supervisor. An investigation revealed that he had ignored dozens of important security reports from Maria and other guards. His lazy attitude and poor leadership had created vulnerabilities that foreign agents had tried to exploit. Thompson was removed from his supervisory position and faced possible court-martial proceedings. His replacement, Master Sergeant David Williams, was a decorated veteran who understood the critical importance of base security. Williams made it clear that gate duty was one of the most important assignments on the base. Master Sergeant Williams met with Maria personally to discuss her future career prospects. He told her that her exceptional performance during the espionage crisis had brought her to the attention of senior military leaders. He said that she would have opportunities to advance to more challenging and important positions. Williams also implemented new procedures based on Maria's recommendations for improving gate security. Her ideas about better communication between shifts, more thorough background checks for delivery personnel, and enhanced training for security guards were Adopted as standard policies throughout the naval base, the investigation continued to reveal the scope of the foreign intelligence operation. Federal agents arrested 12 people who were part of the spy network, including the suspicious man that Maria had observed taking notes near the gate. The operation had been active for over 2 years and had been planning to steal plans for new submarine technology. Maria's reports provided crucial evidence for the prosecution of the foreign agents. Her detailed observations helped investigators understand how the spy network operated and communicated. Her photographs and notes documented meetings and activities that would have been impossible to prove without her careful documentation. The success of the counterintelligence operation brought Maria to the attention of officials in Washington. The Pentagon and other national security agencies wanted to understand how one alert guard had been able to detect and disrupt such a sophisticated espionage effort. They were interested in using Maria's experience to improve security procedures at military bases around the world. Admiral Hayes called Maria to her office again to discuss her future in the Navy. The Admiral explained that Maria's actions had demonstrated exceptional potential for intelligence and security work. She offered Maria the opportunity to apply for advanced training programs that could lead to specialized assignments with elite military units. Maria was overwhelmed by the sudden change in her circumstances. Just weeks earlier, she had been writing letters to her brother wondering if she should leave the military. Now she was being offered opportunities that she had only dreamed about when she first enlisted. But Maria also understood that her success came with new responsibilities. Other young service members were watching to see how she handled her newfound recognition. She wanted to set a good example by remaining humble and focused on serving her country rather than seeking personal glory. The media attention surrounding the espionage case brought Maria's story to national prominence. Newspapers and television programs featured articles about the gate guard who had prevented a major security breach. Military recruiting offices reported increased interest from young women who were inspired by Maria's example. Maria gave several interviews to military publications and appeared at recruiting events to encourage other young people to consider military service. She emphasized that important work could be found in any assignment and that dedication and attention to detail were more valuable than rank or prestigious positions. The transformation in how people treated Maria was complete but not always comfortable. Some people now seemed afraid of her or tried too hard to be friendly after months of treating her badly. Maria preferred the respect she was earning through her work to the artificial friendliness that came from her sudden fame. Maria's roommate Jessica was amazed by the changes in their daily lives. Jessica had always supported Maria but had never fully understood why her friend worked so hard at what seemed like a simple job. Now Jessica realized that Maria's dedication had been protecting everyone on the base from serious danger. As the investigation began to wind down, Maria started preparing for her next assignment. She had been selected for advanced counterintelligence training that would prepare her for specialized security work. Her dream of serving her country in important and challenging roles was finally becoming reality. But first, there would be one more surprise that would cap off the most remarkable period of Maria's military career. A visit from one of the most respected warriors in the entire military was about to provide the ultimate recognition of her exceptional service. 3 months after the espionage crisis, Naval Base San Diego received word that they would be hosting a very special visit. The Secretary of the Navy was coming to personally review the security improvements that had been implemented following the foreign intelligence operation. Along with the Secretary would be several high-ranking military officials, including some of the most decorated warriors in the United States Armed Forces. Among the distinguished visitors would be Commander Jake Mitchell, a Navy SEAL who had become a legend throughout the military community. Commander Mitchell had served in the most dangerous combat zones around the world for over 15 years. He had led countless missions behind enemy lines and had earned every medal for valor that the Navy could award. His reputation for courage and leadership was known by every service member in all branches of the military. Commander Mitchell was also famous for something else besides his combat record. He had an unusual habit of personally recognizing outstanding service members, regardless of their rank or assignment. He believed that heroism and dedication could be found at every level of the military, and he made it his business to honor people who demonstrated exceptional commitment to duty. The preparations for the high-level visit took weeks to complete. Every part of the naval base was cleaned and inspected until it met the highest standards. Security procedures were reviewed and practiced repeatedly. All personnel were briefed on proper protocol for interacting with such important visitors. Maria had been promoted to Petty Officer Second Class and was now supervising the main security checkpoint. Her new rank came with additional responsibilities and respect from her fellow service members. But she still insisted on personally checking the credentials of important visitors, just as she had done when she was mocked for being too thorough. On the morning of the visit, Maria arrived at her post even earlier than usual. She wore her dress blue uniform with the new rank insignia and ribbons that recognized her role in stopping the espionage operation. Her appearance was flawless, and her equipment was perfectly prepared for the most important security inspection of her career. The secretary of the Navy's convoy was scheduled to arrive at exactly 10 o'clock in the morning. Maria and her team had practiced the arrival procedures dozens of times to ensure that everything would go smoothly. Every detail had been planned and rehearsed, including the exact timing of credential checks and vehicle inspections. At 9:55, the convoy of official vehicles appeared on the horizon approaching the main gate. Maria could see the flags flying from the lead vehicle and the motorcycle escorts that surrounded the important passengers. Her heart was beating faster than normal, but her hands were steady and her mind was focused on doing perfect work. The first vehicle in the convoy contained security personnel and staff members. Maria checked their credentials with the same careful attention she had always given to her work. The second vehicle carried the Secretary of the Navy and other high-ranking officials. Maria examined their identification documents and verified their names against her official visitor list. The third vehicle was where Commander Jake Mitchell was riding. As the vehicle stopped at Maria's checkpoint, she could see the legendary SEAL officer through the bulletproof windows. He was exactly as she had imagined from the stories she had heard about him. He looked calm and confident, with the bearing of someone who had faced danger in the most challenging circumstances. Commander Mitchell stepped out of his vehicle and approached Maria's checkpoint. He was wearing his dress uniform with ribbons that told the story of his extraordinary military career. The Silver Star, the Bronze Star with V device for valor. Multiple Purple Hearts and dozens of other decorations covered the left side of his chest. His presence commanded immediate respect from everyone who saw him. Maria came to attention and prepared to check Commander Mitchell's credentials just as she would for any other visitor. She had been briefed about his identity and clearance level, but proper security procedures required that she verify his identification, regardless of his fame or reputation. Commander Mitchell handed Maria his military identification card and smiled slightly as she examined it carefully. He had been briefed about the young petty officer who had prevented the espionage operation, and he was curious to meet the person who had demonstrated such exceptional dedication to duty. Maria checked Commander Mitchell's identification against her computer system and verified his authorization to enter the base. Her inspection was thorough but efficient, exactly as she had been trained to do. She noticed that Commander Mitchell was watching her work with obvious interest and approval. When Maria finished her credential check, she prepared to return Commander Mitchell's identification card and allow him to proceed to his vehicle. This was the standard procedure that she had followed thousands of times during her months of gate duty. But Commander Mitchell did not immediately take back his identification card or move toward his vehicle. Instead, he stepped back from Maria's checkpoint and came to a position of attention. His movement was so sudden and unexpected that everyone in the area stopped what they were doing to watch what would happen next. In front of the entire convoy, Secretary of the Navy visiting, dignitaries, base personnel, and all the people who had once mocked Maria's dedication to gate duty, Commander Jake Mitchell rendered a crisp military salute. The gesture was unmistakable in its meaning and unprecedented in its impact. The silence that followed was profound and electric. Everyone present understood immediately what they were witnessing. One of the most decorated warriors in the entire United States military was publicly honoring a young petty officer who had served with distinction in an assignment that many people considered unimportant. Commander Mitchell held his salute with perfect military bearing, while Maria, surprised but maintaining her composure, returned the salute properly. The exchange lasted only a few seconds, but its significance would be remembered by everyone who saw it for the rest of their careers. After Maria returned his salute, Commander Mitchell walked over to her and extended his hand. He thanked her personally for her exceptional service to the country and told her that her actions had demonstrated the highest ideals of military duty. He said that warriors like Maria made America strong and free. The commander then spoke loudly enough for everyone in the area to hear. He said that gate duty was one of the most important assignments in the military because it was the first line of defense against all threats. He said that Maria had proven that dedication and attention to detail were more valuable than rank or prestige, Commander. Mitchell told the assembled crowd that he had served alongside many heroes in combat zones around the world. He said that Maria belonged in that company because she had shown the same courage and commitment to duty that he had seen in the most dangerous missions. He said that her willingness to stand up for proper procedures despite pressure and harassment had saved classified information that protected American lives. The impact of Commander Mitchell's words and actions was immediate and lasting. Petty Officer Webb, who had led the harassment campaign against Maria, was standing in the crowd watching the ceremony. He finally understood how wrong he had been to mock someone who was actually protecting him and everyone else on the base. Sergeant Thompson, who had been demoted and transferred to another base, heard about the incident within hours. He realized that his failure to recognize Maria's exceptional abilities had been one of the biggest mistakes of his military career. Master Sergeant Williams, who had replaced Thompson as security supervisor, felt proud that Maria was now part of his team. He knew that her example would inspire other guards to take their responsibilities more seriously and maintain the highest standards of professional performance. The story of Commander Mitchell's salute spread throughout the military community within hours. Social media posts and news articles carried the story around the world. Maria became a symbol of how dedication and integrity could triumph over adversity and discrimination. But for Maria, the most important part of the recognition was not the fame or attention. It was the knowledge that her months of faithful service had been acknowledged by someone whose opinion she respected above all others. Commander Mitchell's salute represented the ultimate validation that good soldiers eventually receive the recognition they deserve. As the convoy departed and the excitement of the visit began to fade, Maria returned to her duties at the security checkpoint. She continued to check credentials and inspect vehicles with the same careful attention that had always characterized her work. But now she did so with the confidence that comes from knowing that excellence is always noticed and honored by those who understand its true value. Maria's story became an inspiration for young service members throughout the military. It proved that heroism could be found in any assignment and that dedication to duty would eventually be rewarded. It showed that the most important battles are sometimes fought not with weapons, but with character and commitment to doing what is right.